know you heard me on the radio, flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio, flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.
Rutgers fans, on a dreary and rainy Sunday, one of the things I hate most about the New York metropolitan area, the rest of the country gets festive snow for the holidays, and it's always cold rain here in New York, New Jersey. I am here to talk to you. I talked to you last night a little bit. We didn't get to have a big discussion about the game, just my emotional tirade on where I was as a fan and where I am as a fan. Rutgers falls 40-36 against Penn State in an absolute heartbreaker. That's nothing new for fans of this program. And here's where I am today. I'll cut to the chase. There's a lot of touchy-feely, feel-good nonsense going on out there. Well, you know, this was an excellent offense, best we've had in years. Look, we were so close to beating Penn State. Look at the impressive game we put up. If it wasn't for that one play here or that one play there, you know, we were close. You know, it wasn't a disaster because we won a few Big Ten games. But look, after the Oregon game, what I said was the way to salvage this season is to go out there, beat Purdue, beat Maryland, beat Penn State at home for a bowl bid. And that was how you were going to right the ship and change the feelings around this year and this program. That didn't happen. It came close to happening, but it didn't actually happen. And so a lot of the post-mortem things that we were going to have to do anyway with this program after the season, they still have to occur. And they're going to be more poignant and a bit less feel good because this program won 2 conference games. They beat 2 MAC opponents, one of which was kind of hard to do. They beat an FCS team, and then they barely pull it out against Purdue, who has a ridiculous losing streak in conference. The only game they really put together that was worth much was the way they handily beat Maryland. This isn't a Penn State team that was gunning for a national title. This wasn't a Penn State team that was a playoff contender. Sure, preseason projections. But you can't keep, like, oh, well, they were 5-7. That's not so far off the mark with this schedule. 5-7, one off of our predict guys. You got to look at the schedule the way it actually was and wound up being, not the way it was projected to be in preseason. And Penn State was 5-6 coming into this game. It was on the road for them. They were on their backup quarterback. They fired their head coach. Yeah, Rutgers had some nice plays. Rutgers put together some really nice drives. It was a fun effort, sure. Sure it was. But they lost, and they didn't lose to a contender. They lost to a team that was on par with them this year, pretty much. I know on talent. I know if you look at the talent, the NIL, the star ratings, Penn State's much better. But there's been other teams like that. The team itself this year was 5-6, same as Rutgers, in Rutgers Conference. At what point do we lose the shock and awe and the satisfaction with mediocrity? Where, we hung with a perennial contender, though. We almost beat them. No. This is your conference, the state next door. And you still lose. It's another 50-50 toss-up game is what it was, and you are over in your toss-up games this year and last year, which is why you've had 2 failed seasons in a row. Yes, this was a failed season. Yes, last season was a failed season. And I will say this before I get into some of the game breakdowns and stats. Penn State can say all they want that they don't care, that this isn't a rivalry, that, they just own us. So what is Rutgers? Who is Rutgers? Who cares? It's just not true. Yeah, Penn State owns us for sure. They own this rivalry. We are their little brother. They own us in this rivalry. 150% they own us. But they care about this rivalry, okay? Because that stadium was electric on both sides. It was the most packed I've seen it all season. The bathroom lines, the concession lines, the tailgate scene. And it was probably more because it was so contentious of a game because it meant something and it was going to be a 50-50 game than anything else. I've been to Penn State when they're just dominating us and whatever, and it's not the same energy. That energy was real. They wanted that game. We wanted that game. They care about that game. They care about playing us. There's energy there. The problem is Rutgers just can't make it an actual rivalry by getting away with one win. And I don't know when our next opportunity to do it's going to be. This was by far the best opportunity we were going to have since 1988 to beat Penn State. And what did we do? We failed again. Again. And it wasn't for lack of effort or lack of productivity. You look at the stats here. Rutgers outgained Penn State 533 to 509. I mean, this was the offensive shootout that I've been saying on the RU review with Steve Tishner. I've been talking about all year. Everybody in the podcast sphere has been talking about. This was the offensive shootout that we thought Rutgers had to get into and had to win in order to win some of these toss-up games this year because the defense was going to be so bad. And that's exactly what the game was. 533 to 509 yards, Rutgers outgained Penn State. Rutgers dominated Penn State through the air, 338 yards to Penn State's 209. Penn State wanted to run the ball. We said that coming in. Everybody knew that coming in. They got a backup quarterback. He's prone to some mistakes. He's a young guy. He's talented, but he's a young guy. Their rushing attack is much more potent than their passing attack. And we knew that was going to be the situation. Allen went off 22 carries for 226 yards. It's really unstoppable for most of the game. And Penn State outrushes Rutgers 300 yards to 195. Yards per play, Penn State 9.4, but Rutgers not far behind at 8.3. Rutgers more first downs than Penn State, 27 to 23. Rutgers 5 of 10 on third down. Penn State terrible on third down, 1 of 8, where they really hurt Rutgers. And this was a recurring theme that was a little bit maddening. It started early in the game. Rutgers gets a tough stop, but they go for it. This is the new trend in the pros and in college, going for it on fourth down. And somebody mentioned to me recently with Dan Campbell with Detroit going for it again, like the numbers say that going for it on fourth down is advantageous because you're going to get it more often than not. The teams that keep going for it are going to change that metric. That metric is based on a formula where teams went for it on fourth down when they had a better chance of actually getting it. They're now going for it all the time. It's not going to happen. But Penn State won't be part of the reason the metric comes down because they were a perfect 100% on fourth down. 3 of 3. Rutgers 0 of 2, one being a heartbreaker, which we'll talk about. Rutgers ran 64 total plays to Penn State's 54. That's right where you want to be if you're Rutgers. We allowed 3 sacks. Penn State 1 sack. Came at a really opportune time. Too bad for a negating defensive holding call that screwed that up. Penn State 7 penalties for 54 yards. Rutgers 6 for 42. Evenly matched there. Rutgers 1 fumble lost, 1 turnover. And that's what did him in. That was the deciding factor in the game. Greg Schiano talks about it all the time, turning the ball over. Any coach that you can go through at any level at any time will talk about fundamentals and ball security, not turning the ball over. The 1 turnover in the game was the difference in the game, and it's a shame. Rutgers, again, wins time of possession, 32-25 to 27-35. So Rutgers dominates. Rutgers does everything you want them to do other than stop the run, which you knew they weren't going to do just the way the board was stacked. They dominate time of possession. They dominate through the air. They keep pace, but they still lose the game, and it's because of just that ridiculously crazy turnover. Grunkmeyer, 17 of 21 for 209 yards, 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Ethan Kaliakmanis, 16 of 22, 338 yards, 3 touchdowns, no interceptions. Here's what bothers me a lot. You have a quarterback, and there's all this talk about Ethan Kaliakmanis and, 3,000-yard passer and the best quarterback we've had since Nova. I know there's a lot of people just skipping right over Nova and going to Teal. with respect to Ethan. I'm not there. I'm not saying I would never get there. I need to discuss it with somebody. I'm not there because I don't have, and it should have been Illinois, but for a bad coaching decision, but he doesn't have it because of that bad coaching decision, but he doesn't have the signature win. And Nova, even though at Nova's floor was, much lower than Ethan or anything Ethan's ever done, Nova's ceiling, those Arkansas games, the Michigan game, the bold, dominant performance over UNC, he has those signature wins and fun season memories that Ethan sadly just doesn't have. Ethan is a much better quarterback than anything we've had in several years, and his stats and his season output has been better than what we've experienced. Sadly, despite all this, and I'm not knocking this kid individually, a lot of it's just bad luck, but it tends to be a thing. You had the tough interception in the bowl game last season. This year, you just have two absurdly blunderous plays. I understand the Minnesota game, it probably wasn't on him. It could have been on the center, but you're driving against Minnesota. You can win that 50-50 game. It would mean a lot to you. You beat them at home last year, but to beat them twice after transferring from there, it would have really cemented your legacy in a lot of ways and would have gotten Rutgers to a bowl game this year, despite the Penn State loss. The snap goes through your legs. It's just, and then this game, you drop back, you have Fletcher open. It's rare for me, who's a consummate pessimist, especially when it comes to sports and my teams. Most of the game, and I think Mike might have said this, Broadbent. And by the way, shout out to the guys at the game, all the TKR crew. I did get to see them, and it was cool. And I have a picture I'll try to upload. I don't know what occurred here. I can't seem to find it in the moment. But shout out to those guys. Got to hang out with them. It was cool. But Mike said, for most of the game, I was kind of resigned just to the fact that, we were probably not going to close it out, and Penn State was gonna beat us, and that's how I felt, right? Like Penn State kept getting the score after Rutgers did. Rutgers had trouble answering a little bit. It looked like Penn State was just going to be unstoppable on the ground. And here's that picture, by the way. Good to see the guys from TKR, Alec, Mike, Richie. Good to just, hang out, catch up, talk, you know what I mean, in person a little bit and toss around some stuff. The spirits were good. People were excited about the game, and it would have been a great epic story had we won, kind of like I feel about that 2014 Michigan game. And that's what I mean. Rutgers is not, our fan base is not, having champagne wishes and caviar dreams. Okay, we're not wishing for a national championship. We're cool with beating a down and out Michigan team in 2014 and having the memories associated with that. And we would have been content beating a 5-6 Penn State team to have 3 conference wins and get to, Detroit or New York for a bowl game. We're not asking for the world. So that's the other thing. Stop saying we're asking for the world on a low budget. That's not what this fan base is about. But it would have been memorable. But Mike said, look, for most of the game, I was kind of like, okay, I could see anywhere which way this is going. And same for me. A lot of the game, I was trying to be in concession stands. I was in the bathroom lines. I was also down there watching. And I said, look, valiant effort. When we scored before the half, I was excited. But Penn State comes right back and is able to put a field goal on the board. I was like, oh, here we go. This defense just can't stop them. How can you not hold the tie for 27 seconds? You let him get a field goal. But I'll be honest with you, even me, one of the most pessimistic fans, I know I do a roundabout way of talking. We know some other people do that too. When we were driving the ball with only a bit, a little bit of a third of the quarter left in the game, and we're up, and our offense is looking just as unstoppable as Penn State's offense. We're playing with confidence. Ethan is slinging the ball. And we're driving. And we have all these weapons, and this quarterback's on point. I mean, I admit, while resign most of the game, most of the week, most of the season to probably losing this game, and that's that. I genuinely, and silly and shame on me for doing it. I was actually confident. I actually thought we were going to win that game. And it wasn't just a logical thought, a conscious thought. It was a subconscious, visceral thought, feeling. I thought we were going to win that game. Shame on me for thinking it. I let myself down by thinking it. That's my own fault. And it's funny. I told my girlfriend on the way out to the game. I said, they're gonna if they lose, that's fine. If they get blown out, that's fine. We'll leave early. We'll have an early night. If they lose decisively, that's fine. I said the only way I'm going to be upset is if they lose on some ridiculous play in a close game. That's the only way I'm going to get upset. And that's exactly what happened. Fletcher's open. You get the first down. You keep driving. The clock keeps running. You get a touchdown. You're up 2 scores. And the way the game was going, sure, Penn State certainly could have driven down the next possession and scored a touchdown and got it back to a 1-score game. But the clock would have been vastly depleted from there, the way Rutgers was running the ball. And then you get another crack at the ball. And if you sustain another drive, the game's probably over. And I was genuinely confident at that moment. Shame on me. And one of the most freak plays I've ever seen is just straight up drops the ball. Now, you can't put the entire loss on one young man, especially somebody who played so well the entirety of the rest of the game. But it's just frustrating that, a quarterback who's that good numbers-wise overall season has these plays happen at some of the most inopportune times. That's not just him. That's a symptom of the entire program. And for a program that I said it early before the season, and I'll say it again, the X factor, the special team soundness, the chop the moment, the fundamental, the solid fundamentals at times when you need them most. That was supposed to be Schiano ball. That's the equalizer where Rutgers could rise to the occasion and beat teams that were more talented than them. And dropping the ball untouched or the ball going through somebody's legs, those are the things that have cost us games over the last couple of years. And so that X factor that Schiano used to bring to the table is just not there when you're losing on those types of mishaps. I'll go through because it's not only that play, right? There's other plays in the game. So, for instance, I wanted Rutgers to empty the tank, and it was interesting. You did see some things that Rutgers did, especially on offense, that they hadn't done most of the year, but they built off of, right? Look, so we talked about Kenny Fletcher, right? He would go out into the flat and run that same route every time, game in and game out, and we started to wonder where they were going to build something off of that. Well, there was an excellent play where he goes, down the sideline, and it's because he broke off that route and went up, and it wasn't expected. And there were things that Rutgers did that worked really well. But one of the things, when I'm talking about emptying the tank and we're talking about a fake field goal, I'm fine with Patel running the ball. Actually, a lot of people are saying, "Oh, how do you put Patel, who's unathletic, who hadn't done anything like that before? How do you put the ball in his hands in a game like this?" Well, I think it's genius, right? Because you put the ball in his hands because no one expects him to run it. Schiano said he saw something in Penn State's field goal coverage that would have allowed for it, but they seemed to be in perfect coverage when it happened. My issue with that call is not that they ran it, is not that they give it to Patel. It's that it was 4th and 8. If that was a 4th and 2, a 4th and 3, a 4th and 1, even a 4th and 4, I mean, go for it. But why are you doing that when it's 4th and long? That's what I have an issue with there. That just seems like they had it again, this stubbornness of Schiano sometimes in the staff. We have it. We're going to run it. I've seen something I like. But just because there's some fissure in Penn State's field goal coverage and you want to run it at some point, keep it in your pocket for when the right opportunity presents itself. Keep it in your pocket for the right opportunity. The fact that we ran it on a 4th and long early in the game, I just don't think was a good move. I think it should have been done when we had a bit of a better, lie, as they say in golf, to run that play. Then what really got me was the last drive. you get to 2nd and 2, and you essentially have 3 plays to get a first down. A lot of people are harping on the 4th down call, which was the option where Ethan is gobbled up. I actually like that call. I like that call. You know why? Because Antoine Raymond's been running nonstop over you all game. The defense, there's a good chance, is going to bite and collapse onto Raymond to try to stop him. If you want to give Ethan, who has, not as successfully as some other guys, but has successfully executed that play in the past for first downs, I don't have a problem with running that because it might catch them off guard. He pulls the ball. You think they're going to collapse on Raymond. You think he might have some room to get the first down. It's only a yard. Sadly, it's coming out of shotgun. It doesn't work. Penn State was disciplined. That happens. What I have an issue with is the play before. You're going for the tush push. You get 1 yard. Antoine Raymond has been running over guys. I know he was stuffed on the 2nd down play, but he hasn't been stuffed 2 times in a row for most of the game. He's found his yards, especially 1 yard, 2 yards. He's found those yards. I mean, either A, just feed him twice on 3rd and 4th and live with the results, or B, I have no issue with feeding him on 3rd and then running the option to try to catch him off guard, but feed him. If it was 3rd and 1, I could see trying to just go up the middle with the quarterback, running it. But come on, guys. Why didn't you feed him on the 3rd down play? That's what I have an issue with. Raymond, to his credit, 29 carries, 189 yards, a touchdown, 6.5 average. He's grown into an absolute monster. KJ Duff, 5 receptions, 127 yards, averaging 25, and one of the best catches you will ever see for this program. But the sad part is, we can talk about that catch all we want, and Duff himself as a player, I mean, he should probably want to get that catch framed. But it kind of amounts to that amazing catch. I don't remember because I don't remember the name of the player, but I'm sure it's somebody, and I'm sure Alec knows, our resident Seahawks fan. Remember the Seahawks' epic catch along the sideline in the Super Bowl they lost against New England? Does anybody? Do you remember that? If you think, you'll probably remember. It was an epic, amazing catch along this. It was an epic catch. But no one really talks about it because subsequently, instead of feeding Marshawn Lynch, the Seahawks threw a slant route that gets picked off in the end zone, and New England wins the Super Bowl. So that amazing catch doesn't go down in history anywhere near the same way that the Tyree catch for the New York Giants goes down in history, because that wasn't the game-winning catch. That would just kept the drive alive. But then you find Manning finds a receiver. Was it Burris? I don't know why I'm it's too early for me to do this. I think it was Plexico Burris in the end zone. And that's why you remember the David Tyree catch so much, because it was followed up by a touchdown and a game winner, not by a blunder. And so great. Yeah, KJ Duff goes through, gets that epic catch, but then we can't convert. And it winds up not winning the game. So that catch doesn't have the same gusto as it could have. And just like Ethan Kaliakmanis' stat lines this season don't have the same level of gusto or memorability of that they would had they won the game or won some more games. And at a certain point, I'm getting sick and tired of, we have this long injury report because we have to list every player that's out for the season so that our injury report looks so, daunting compared to who we're playing. And we can keep talking about, well, look, all the guys we lost, look at all the guys on offense and defense. Some of the guys are not even real role players, but they're listed there just to show how daunting it was. And then we barely pull out the game. We almost beat Penn State, but for a freak play. But Penn State is 5-6. They're in our conference. And then you go against these other teams, and we had 50-50 games, and we couldn't pull out any of them. And it gets tiring to be so satisfied with mediocrity. And we're almost there. We're almost there. We're not almost there. We're nowhere near almost there. We won 2 conference games. It's not good enough. And by the way, you can't almost be there when you're trying to build perpetually, but you keep losing guys. This quarterback is gone. He's going to graduate. That's it. Now, Ian Strong, does he go to the league? Does he go to the NFL? I think there's a decent chance he tests the market in the NFL. We'll see what he does. Him, and especially KJ Duff. KJ Duff is going to get the bag, man. A bunch of programs are going to want KJ Duff. I would be very surprised. Now, Rutgers can try to pull all their assets together and try to see if they can keep him. After the game, Duff said it's not the time to talk about that. I have never seen that answer wind up good for the incumbent team. I'll tell you that. I've never seen a player say, well, now's not the time, and then have the player come back. I've rarely seen that. Usually means, well, I'm going to get to that and we're going to look at it. And when that's the case, it's going to be tough for Rutgers because there's going to be a lot of money coming in from a lot of really good programs that are going to want KJ Duff on their team. And holding on to him is going to be really difficult. And I don't blame the kid when you've been on this program for how many years now? You've played your heart out. You're a premier player in a premier conference and you can't even get to a bowl game. And it's just getting to a point where I don't see it's going to be really hard to keep KJ Duff. Antoine Raymond, I know the program is huge on running backs. They've sent 2 previous running backs to the league who have become dominant in the league. They're going to put a lot of resources behind keeping him. Coach Giano's philosophy is 100%, run game first. I get that. They're going to try their best to keep him, but they're going to be coming after him too. So that's going to eat up some of your NIL money there. Ian Strong, like I said, a lot of speculation early in the year he was going to go to the league. We'll see what happens. He got the injury. He was a little banged up as the year came down the stretch. Does he still do that? Does he want to come back for another year? How much money can he make in college versus the NFL? And again, who's going to come after him and want to pay him the bag? The interior offensive linemen, these guys, a lot of them are older. You're going to lose those guys. You're going to have to reshuffle the offensive line. You already knew you had to reshuffle the defense because it was an abject failure this year. You definitely have to reshuffle the defensive staff. But all this talk about, oh, we're almost there. No, you're not. Every year you got to start over. And you all you do is miss opportunities. What I think is really telling and really upsetting as a Rutgers fan is that, yes, you have a quarterback who is leaps and bounds, a quarterback who is worlds better than the last starter, which was Gavin Wimsatt. But with Gavin Wimsatt, you got to a bowl game and you won a bowl game. It doesn't mean Wimsatt's better than Kaliak Manis. No, what that means is despite being worlds better at the most important position in the game of football, the position that matters the most, despite being worlds better at that position, you are actually less effective and have done worse overall in the win-loss column. And that's a huge problem. I don't care how many yards you put up. I don't care how great the offense looks compared to what it used to. If your wins and losses are worse, where did it really get me? It was a whole lot of numbers and fanciness and fun to wind up in a worse position than we were. And that's not on the quarterback. That's on the head coach and the program. You brought in Rob Smith. You brought Rob Smith back, and the defense was an abject failure. You spent NIL funds on certain guys who didn't pan out. I know there's a lot of moving parts. I know you didn't have infinite NIL. I know you were going up against other teams who were trying to outbid you and did outbid you. I know all these things, but it still comes down to the program as a whole. It's not good enough. It's not good enough. This many years in the Big Ten, this many years under Greg Schiano 2.0, and you still want a moral victory for barely beating a conference rival who is the same record as you at home? No, I'm not going to give it to you. The errors that happened, it's not a freak error that hadn't happened at all. That error, whether it's the snap through the legs or these errors keep rearing their heads one way or another, and that's a program issue. That becomes a trend. That would be a freak play if it wasn't so typical of the way Rutgers has lost several games as of recent. It's not good enough. And going into this offseason, if you're going to, don't tell me now, just like you told me last time, well, Bailey left. Teray left. This guy left. That guy left. Well, now it's, KJ Duff. Well, how are we supposed to play when KJ Duff left? He got the bag from so-and-so. How are we supposed to play when it's a first-year starter or quarterback and, Ian Strong left? How are we making up for that production? How are we doing? Well, guess what? They made up for it in the running back room 3 times running now. It's possible to do. How are we going to make up for Common Guy? They did. So don't tell me it's impossible, but don't start with the excuses because I can already see them a mile away. This was your chance to beat Penn State for the first time since 1988. You had it there on a silver platter. You once again didn't do it. This was your chance. Last year was your chance to get to 9 wins. You had it there. It was possible. Don't tell me it wasn't. It was. You couldn't do it. You know the defense is going to be a liability. It's not going to be the best. It's not going to be like it was 2 years ago, no matter what. But you bring in a guy who you had fired, and when you fired him, you vastly improved. That's who you bring back in. And you can tell me he was the only candidate out there, but if some of that is attributable to the fact that guys don't want to work for you, well, then that's also on you. Am I calling for Schiano to be on the hot seat? Am I calling for him to be fired? No, I'm not. And before you start deriding me, I mean, I was one of the guys. I wrote a letter to Barchi about bringing Schiano back. I promised to donate a certain amount of money to the program if they did hire Schiano. Barchi wrote me back and said, I hope you stick to your pledge. I did. I was pounding the walls to bring the guy back. I love what he does with the stadium. I love the whole Jersey atmosphere. I love the Springsteen. I love the Sopranos intro. I love everything the guy does. He's a legend in my mind. He's brought me so many great memories of this program. He's a great guy. He's a good person. He develops players excellently. I love all these kids in this program. But I'm just keeping it 100% objective about the program-wide issues that we're in. Yeah, you can say, oh, it's a freak incident that he dropped the ball, but everything led up to this point this season. The season overall gave you 2 conference victories. That's not gonna cut it. Especially when you're at a conference, had not one power conference team on it. It doesn't cut it, man. I'm not falling for it. This was 2 failed seasons in a row because the opportunities that had presented themselves, you squandered. Beating Purdue and Maryland is the bare minimum this year to not be catastrophic. 7 wins last year was the bare minimum, and they got to 6. Which I'm confusing myself now. Either way, they should have done better. They should have done better. And it's the same story. And they were 7-5 last season. So that's what I thought. I made a mistake. But the opportunities there to beat Illinois, to get to 8 wins, to get to 9 wins, they were there. The opportunity to win the bowl game was there, and they failed. Are they better than they were before Schiano came back? 100%. Is it good enough? No. Not 2 conference wins is not good enough. Being in the bottom of the Big Ten every year because you have 3 out of conference victories is not good enough. Is it better? Yeah, it's better. Is it improvement? Yeah, it's an improvement. But I'm sick and tired of losing all the 50-50 toss-up games. I'm sick and tired of not getting over the hump against any of these perennial teams, even when they're at their lowest. I'm sick and tired of it. When the only guy who's ever gotten over a perennial foe is Kyle Flood, you've got problems. He's the one who beat Michigan. Michigan was down and out that year. Michigan was not good. It was the worst Michigan's been in years and since. But they still pulled out the victory. And I haven't seen that once since. I know Indiana's throwing the bag at everybody and this and that, but look how that was a team we counted on for a victory every year, and look where they are now. I don't even want to get there. Just get me 8 wins. Get me 7 this year. Get me 6. I would have been happy with 6. I would have still done a post-mortem because I told you I would have. I still would have analyzed some of the deficiencies in the program because it still could have been more wins. But beat Penn State, get me to 6, and I would have been somewhat content. I don't even want to be Indiana. I just want to be half of what Indiana is. And think about the fact I'm even saying that. Think about how brutal that is. I want to be half of what Indiana is in football. That's how terrible and pathetic this is. And I know people are going to deride me. You're so negative, but I can't. I'm a fan. Now, I'm not an uneducated fan. I'm not an inobjective fan. I'm a legitimate fan who shows up every week, who spends his time doing this podcast to connect with Rutgers fans, to try my best to support the program. And I'm telling you, I got to call out what I see. This has to get better. Again, I'm not calling for any firings of the head coach, any kind of crazy overhauls, but there has to be some serious introspection. The coaching staff needs to be shaken up, especially on the defensive side, if not completely switched over. Some guys you retain and do whatever you got to do. And you've got to retain these players because you can't keep developing guys like a KJ Duff and then lose them. You got to keep them because you're going to have one more crack with a talent like that to do something. You had Kyle Monangai, who's dominating on the Bears. You had Pacheco, who's got a Super Bowl rings, who's dominant on one of the best teams in the last decade. And you still couldn't do much with those guys. I know you had other deficiencies, but think about it. How is that a lot different than Dylan and Ace? I understand basketball's different. You got two players, you got to build less around them. There's less perennial, competition. And I'm being a bit hyperbolic with the comparison. But still, these guys are hyper talented. And you're not able to get over the hump at all with these guys. And if you lose this guy, Duff, you lose these kids, you're back to square one. You bringing up Surace. Surace has a lot of potential. I love the way he looked in the spring game. Anybody who will talk will tell you that he's got a legitimate chance to even surpass Ethan Kaliakmanis. Great pedigree, great talent, decisive, good arm, athletic kid. But you got to give him the weapons. You got to bring him in with a guy like Duff who's already there. You can't bring him in with just a bunch of, developing with them. I mean, I know that's partially college. You got to find a way to hold on to it because you squandered your opportunity this year. Had you won some of the 50-50 games the last two seasons, had you won a few of them, I think you would have had more goodwill and you would have had the opportunity if guys leave to rebuild, but you haven't done that. So you've got to retain these guys. You've got to do better next year. You've just got to. And this epic, just the way we lost the game is just insult to injury for the team. I feel bad for the kids. They're the kids on the field. But the fans, too. Penn State's in there, and they were quiet for a solid quarter because they thought they were finally going to lose, and they deserve to lose. But you just give them a gift. You drop the ball without being touched, and they take it. You don't only drop the ball without being touched, but they take that same play to the end zone to completely flip the game, and that's the difference in the game. That's an insult to injury for the fan base and for everybody in the stadium wearing scarlet. It just is, and it's just not good enough, man. I'm tired of pretending that it is good enough because it's not good enough. This season, last season, should have been much, 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 much better. And I wasn't one of these naysayers. You can go back and watch my previews. I wasn't a naysayer the year they went to the bowl game. I thought they would win that. I predicted that schedule exactly as it wound up. I thought last year they'd get to 8 or 9. I thought this year they could get to 6 or 7. And I'm not a naysayer. I'm not also unrealistic. I didn't say 10. I didn't think they'd beat teams. Remember, Penn State was supposed to be a loss, and I still thought they'd get to 6 and 6. So the fact that Penn State was even a toss-up game and we still didn't reach even where I thought they could have is even more a testament to how many times they fumbled these winnable games, failing to punch even a little bit above their weight class and failing to win any toss-up games. Just brutal. Just brutal. And the way the season played out with the talent we had on offense is just, it's unacceptable that the defense was that bad. And then it's unacceptable that even when the defense showed up, the offense couldn't convert in the red zone, couldn't get things done, had some kind of blunder at some inopportune time every game sufficient to keep us under 500 and not entering the postseason. Just not good enough, man. Overall, just not good enough to lose a game that way at the end of a season like this. I can't co-sign it. I can't co-sign the encouragement. I can't co-sign that. I just don't think it was good enough. And just like last year, I couldn't co-sign it. You can't throw dust in my eye again and tell me about all the injuries and tell me this and tell me, oh, if it wasn't for that ridiculous freak play, because it's always some freak play. It's always some injury. It's always something. Other teams rise above it. You got to rise above it too. Yeah, if it wasn't for the ridiculous timeout against Illinois. Okay, how many times are we going to harp on it? We're going to be talking about this game the same way next year. If it wasn't for that ridiculous fumble, we would have won that game. Enough. Don't do the fumble. Don't call the timeout. Enough. But look, that's a little bit of a intro into the postmortem we're going to do on this season. We're going to follow the offseason news, see who they retain, see who gets fired, see who gets hired. There's going to be reshuffling around the college football landscape. There always is. There's a manageable schedule next year. There really is. BC didn't do great this year. That might be our toughest out-of-conference opponent. You got a manageable Big Ten schedule. It's never going to be completely manageable, especially the way it was last year, which we fumbled. But it's maybe more manageable than this year. Maybe. Again, you never know. You can't really call it like that until you get into the season. You see who is who and what they are. But based on projections and just general vibes, I mean, it's a manageable schedule maybe. But it starts with retaining these kids. It starts with reshuffling the coaching staff. And it starts with getting this young quarterback on his way to take the reins. I'm not giving up on this program or this coach or any of those things, but I'm not very encouraged right now. And I do think that these last two seasons have been ultimately not successes. And I don't think there's any way around that. You can polish it up any way you'd like. They were not successful seasons. And, something's got to change. You got to turn the corner sooner or later. All this talk about NIL, sure. Sure, we are competing with teams with more NIL, but I've heard of a figure that we might have had to spend, and I'll let the person who might know that say it if they know it. But the figure wasn't pennies. And it's the way you decide to spend things. And that there's some criticism that exists there too, So I'm not going to sit here and tell you everything's going to be all right and we made a valiant effort and all this and that. It was two failed seasons, and we've got to do better. So we will talk more about the postmortem. We will diagnose it further. I have a interesting concept for an episode coming up with two guys you guys know that will go into the postmortem even more so. And I'm going to get on the kind of quarterbacking and production of that. And I'll be back to talk with you guys. And I know we have basketball. Basketball is a whole nother blunder. I know they had the one victory, but that's something that's just becoming lamer and lamer duck as it goes. And so there's not a lot to love right now, but I still appreciate you guys listening to Night Watch and spending some time with me. If you are watching on YouTube, remember this is also available as an audio podcast on every major podcast platform. Go out and download that, subscribe on your favorite audio app. And if you're listening as an audio, come on over to YouTube and check out the videos and click subscribe. It was nice meeting all the people I met, all the listeners and all the guys out there at the game on Saturday. It was nice hanging out with Alec, Mike, and Richie. And it's always nice talking to all of you guys. So we are not going anywhere. You will hear from me again, but it's a sad end to Rutgers season. Even though they're tough and they break our heart, go Knights, and Larry K is out.
I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the Jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K. I know you heard me on the radio flexing. She loved the sound of my voice, it's the best thing. Daydreaming of the Jazz all day. Pick up the phone late night with Larry K.